joining the Crypto Club. The reason we started the Crypto Club was because that it's really fascinating and it's very interesting. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about cryptocurrencies and what they are and what blockchain is and what a block is and what's staking and what's proof of work and this and that. And so I thought that we would spend several weeks, maybe about a month, so about 1 or 2 sessions a week for about 1.5, 2 months, and kind of, slowly but certainly move through the material a pretty high level and just dipping down into the stuff that's relevant and important to understand in order to continue to move ahead. So that's what we'll do. And we have a lot of really cool information that we're going to share with everybody. My background is offensive IT security, so I have a background in computer hacking. And so I spent 20 years hacking into banks and pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that. And so I have a lot of really fascinating insights based on my work. And one of the slide decks that I have, I'll actually talk about a lot of the problems that I saw. Can you guys hear? It's okay, yeah. A lot of the stuff that I saw when a bank was hacked and I got called in at 2 in the morning to clean up the mess. And I just, very early on in my career, lost faith in the establishment because of the stuff that I was exposed to via my work. And so we're going to talk a lot about that, which is really fascinating and quite interesting. And we're also going to talk about potential solutions to some of these problems that I saw. And blockchain is actually quite a beautiful solution, an elegant solution to a lot of the issues that I saw. Okay, so essentially, we're all here today because we want to learn a little bit about cryptocurrencies, blockchain, NFT, what's decentralized finance or DeFi, and we'll go into some of that detail. It's a really fascinating topic. It's not that complicated once you get your head around it. And it's really useful. The real world applications for blockchain are vast, very, very vast. Okay, so we have lots of stuff to cover. So I encourage you. Can we have an IT person? All right. I can just perfect. Cool. Okay, so this is the one that I spoke about, the problems with legacy money and banking. There are many problems with it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit of detail. Talk about cryptocurrencies, which is obviously, it's everyone's talking about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and a lot of people are perhaps confusing the terms, using blockchain when in fact they should be using cryptocurrency or whatnot. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about hashing, because this plays a very important role into the whole security model of a blockchain. We're going to talk about, or Gabe's going to talk about NFTs, and Dominic's going to talk about DeFi and probably a touch on staking as well. I'm going to show a really simple example of what staking is, just so people understand. What is staking? I don't get it. What is mining? Sorry, not staking, mining. I'm going to show an example of mining, because a lot of people think, mining. Obviously, when I think of mining, I picture a man or a woman walking into a cave with a pickaxe on their back. And it's kind of similar but different. Okay? Okay, Kara. And we will learn why we can trust blockchain. What is it about a chain of blocks that can enable us to trust it? Okay, this is super important, and this is essentially cornerstone for all blockchain and cryptocurrency products out there, except for a few scandals that occurred, like OneCoin, who claimed that they had a cryptocurrency where in fact they had an SQL database, which is very, very different. Okay, we'll also talk about we will hopefully, via the course of these talks, help give people a little bit of confidence in interacting with cryptocurrencies, buying a cryptocurrency, holding it, selling it, because it is cryptocurrency. They are a wild beast. They are very, very volatile. I've been trading Forex for many years, and Forex is volatile, but it pales in contrast to cryptocurrencies. This is something that we'll touch on. Rather try and give people confidence. We'll talk about staking, what is staking, earning interest, which is fascinating, because if you consider, for example, if you have a bank account filled with American dollars, or even euros, or whatever other currency you have, you have to pay the bank money to hold money. And you think like, what? I mean, I have to pay you money to hold my money. I mean, that doesn't even make sense, does it? And so some of these crypto services provide a solution to that. We're also going to talk about trading, which is fascinating and really difficult to get right. And the reason it's difficult to get right is because, I mean, we're human beings. We want confirmation before we make a decision to do anything. And so when Bitcoin was $5 a Bitcoin and it was going up, and people are standing on the sidelines thinking, well, I want to get in. Are you going to get in? Yeah, I'm going to get in. And then maybe that person gets in. Are you going to get in? I'm going to wait till you get in. Okay, but I'm not ready to get in yet. And so everyone's kind of waiting for this confirmation. And this confirmation essentially results in us missing the boat. And so we will talk about trading based on a liquidity distribution model, which is fascinating because if you consider what makes the price of any asset move, it's essentially the liquidity, rather the amount of that liquidity or asset that you have and how many people are willing to buy it and willing to sell it. So it's a constant struggle between supply and demand. Okay, we're going to talk about buying cryptos, how you can buy cryptos. We're going to talk about what wallets are. I mean, we have a very clear concept of what a normal wallet is, but what's a cryptocurrency wallet? What does it actually do? We're going to talk about how you can safely store your crypto in a wallet. We're going to talk about cold wallets and hot wallets and exchanges and stuff like that, which is all something I think that we need to be very well acquainted with, and much more. Good, so let's get started. Because we'll just continue on that last point, and that is, I'll give you an anecdote from my personal life. When we lived in Mallorca, I had a good friend, an American guy named Ryan, and he had a childhood friend of his, and about a year ago, he slipped into a very, very deep depression, and my friend was speaking with him on a very regular basis, saying, I mean, how you doing, man? What's going on? And I said, what's the deal with your friend? And he said, my friend had 7,000 Bitcoins on an external hard disk, and his girlfriend overwrote the private keys with a film. And so he was struggling a little bit. So he was laying under tables in the fetal position for obvious reasons. And so we want to make sure that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. Okay, so a little bit about who I am, why I'm standing here. My name is Sarid Harper. I'm Maris and Severin's dad. I've been in Bali for maybe 3 or so years. I spent the past 20 years working with offensive IT security, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. And so spending a lot of time primarily working for banks and big pharma and government and stuff like that. And that was fascinating. Worked a lot with computer viruses as well. Started writing them, got into a bit of trouble, found out it wasn't a good idea. But I found out that there's the other side, and you can actually get a job dissecting computer viruses. So that's what I did for about 3 or so years. I did a lot of vulnerability research as well, so looking for software packages on telephones and computers, and trying to find remotely exploitable software bugs. And this was cool because all of our customers were 3-letter agencies. And so you think, I mean, why would that government or that government be interested in buying a zero-day exploit information for Internet Explorer exploits? Anyway, so a lot of code reviews and stuff like that. And so I was sitting in banks probably for about at least 10 years of my 20-odd year career, big pharma, so a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies. And so my background is software engineering, and so I had a very keen interest on these things. It's fascinating. Okay, and so one of the things that I realized, I would come home from work and I'd have a long face and I'd think, oh my God, I can't believe what just happened today. And obviously I couldn't speak a lot about what I did, but the main takeaway was that you could trust absolutely nobody. And so I had a tough time with that. Another one is our data is our responsibility. You can never give your data to another person or a company or an entity or a government and expect that they'll do the right thing. Trust me, they never do the right thing, and it always ends up going bad. Okay, so you always have to use a protection. I think we remember this from sexual education from when we were young. This applies in the computer world as well. And the final one is if you're not paying for a service, then you are very likely the product that is indeed being sold. And so you have to remember these things. A little bit of pessimism, distrust to the establishment and these services that we run around using every day. Good. Okay, let's move on to the next slides. Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about legacy money and legacy banking. And this is important because we need to, yes, this is a workshop about crypto and whatnot, but we need to understand what the problem is. I mean, is there a problem? Is there something that we're struggling with? Why do we need blockchain and whatnot? And so we have to understand a little bit about the existing money system. We have to understand a little bit about how the banks work. We have to understand a little bit about money in order to appreciate where blockchain technology comes in, almost like a hand that moves into a well-fitting glove, and how it solves a lot of these problems very, very elegantly and very beautifully. Okay, we're also going to talk a little bit about the current situation, what's going on now, and we're going to talk a little bit about, I mean, where we're headed, what's down the road. And this whole corona pandemic situation has us seeing maybe the ugly face of something a little bit dire down the road. There's a very, at least from my perspective, I see it as like a power grab. The government's trying to take power. They're trying to take things from us that are rightfully ours, like, I don't know, our rights and stuff like this. And so we also have to understand how banking and governments, how they are very, very, very intimately related and in bed with each other, essentially. Okay, so what is money? I mean, we all run around. We have, in Indonesia, we have Indonesian rupiah. We all know them from the beautiful colors. But what is money? Well, money is nothing more than a legal tender. And it is a legal tender because a government says it is. Okay, there is no real value in money besides from the fact that if I have 10,000 rupiah, I know I can get myself a nice nasi bungkus down on the road. That's the value that it has for me. Okay, but if you try and translate that, if you try and look at the underlying value of money, there isn't really money. The only thing that you can do in order to establish the value of a given currency relative to something else is what you can get with it. And sometimes you can get a lot of something, and other times you can get less of that. Have a good friend from South America, a gentleman I met in Spain, and he was telling me these horror stories of when he was a young boy, and his mother was paid in cash every day. And as soon as she was paid, she would run to the supermarket and she would buy food because she knew if she waited 4 hours, the prices of the food would go up. I mean, that's staggering, and that's real. And that's what we're starting to see at the moment all over the world. We have the Federal Reserve. What do they have, a balance sheet of $30 trillion? I mean, that's dizzying. And so there are no reservations, there are no rules, it seems, or ethics in relation to just simply printing money. And when we have a lot of something, what typically happens to that something? Well, then it becomes less attractive. No one really wants to own it because it's in abundance. Okay, we look at this one as well. This is maybe something that many of us don't realize, but the moment that you put your money in the bank, it's no longer yours. Okay, and what that means is essentially that if I have 1,000 rupiah and I give it to my bank, the bank doesn't have to give me my money back if they don't want to. What they have to do is they have to give me something that is equal to 1,000 rupiah, which is typically bank stock, because that's all that they have. So they have to kind of move, kind of float value around on the books, and they say, yeah, we have money in the bank which is worth this much. We don't want to give our deposits back to the people. We have to give them something of equal value, which is typically bank stock in extreme situations. And so we think that our money in the bank is ours, but it's actually not. And that's normally not a big problem because, you know, you go to the bank, you need $100, you go and you take $100. You need to buy food or whatever, you can normally get your money. But in extreme situations, this is not always going to be the case. Okay, what else is money? Again, I'm a little bit pessimistic. 20 years of experience, I apologize for my pessimism. But to me, money is the ultimate tool of enslavement. Everyone's running around trying to get more of it, so they can buy more stuff, and they can, yeah. We also have this where we have, this is one of the primary issues with traditional money, and that is that we have money, and if we have some in the bank, we are often punished to keep it. You think, I mean, you're punished to keep it. Well, this is in the terms of negative interest rates. And because we have, the economy is based on consumerism, the health of an economy is based on how much money people are spending, which is quite absurd, really. Because even though people aren't spending money, they can still be quite happy and be doing quite well. But the governments, they need a way, the economists, they need a way to be able to measure the rate of spending so they can see how the economy is going. So they punish us if we have too much money in the bank. And they do this in an attempt to take the money out of the bank and spend it and reintroduce it to the economy so that we can bring the economy, give it like a bit of a saline injection. You have to pay to access your own money. So if I want to go to the ATM down wherever and I put my credit card in there and I get money out, I'm paid to access my own money, which is also a little bit strange. And all legal tender is essentially owned by the government. Okay, this is also something we need to remember. Okay, so a little bit, I hope this isn't too boring. I'll skate over this as quickly as I can. So we have legacy money. And legacy money, there are a few different things, and I'm gonna look at these from a blockchain perspective. And we have availability issues, we have value issues, which we touched on a second ago. We have control of money, and we have accessibility. So if we look at availability, I mean, there are some areas of the world that do not provide banking solutions for the people who live there because of, we can have infrastructure limitations. It's difficult to put an ATM in the middle of the Sahara Desert. You have to dig long trenches and you have to put electricity and whatnot. And so it can be quite difficult. It can also be expensive. A lot of us pay fees for banking, and they're relatively marginal, but they can be quite expensive. And so some people, the expenses of using legacy money are too much, and so people are less inclined to use money. What about the value of money? We have this buzzword that is media headline stuff, and it's inflation. And what does inflation mean? Inflation means that essentially the value of your money decreases in value as the supply of the money increases. And so we have, if you look at the stock market, for example, until rather recently, I mean, they were doing these parabolic moves every month, just boom, 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 new all-time highs. Everyone's jumping up and down. Everyone's just earning tons of money. And then you think about, I mean, what does that mean? Who's buying the stock market? Who's buying equities in the middle of a pandemic? I mean, there aren't many people buying equities in the middle of a pandemic, but there is a key handful of institutions who are, and those are the central banks. And you think, well, don't they run out of money? Well, they should run out of money, but when they do run out of money, they just flick on the printer and print another trillion. Then they inject that into the stock market to keep things artificially inflated. Okay, and so we're seeing the stock market just continue to go higher, and it is absolutely, positively unsustainable, and a market crash will occur. It's not possible to continue like this. Okay, and then we have, well, I said earlier that it was valueless. What does that even mean? Well, we had something called the gold standard, which stopped in 1971, and that meant, for example, American dollars. You have an American dollar, and every American dollar that was in circulation, there was an equal amount of gold in the basement Federal Reserve. And so there was value, real value, tangible value, gold. I mean, we all know and love gold, behind every single dollar that was in circulation. But since 1971, that has been discontinued, which means that there is no gold, there is no underlying value, it's perceived value. And the value that we have of money is actually decreasing, and it's decreasing really, really, really quickly. I think more than the headlines will lead us to believe. If you really do the math, I think that you'll probably fall off your chair. Okay, then we have another one, which is super important, and which is where blockchain comes in, and it solves this bottom one really beautifully, very, very elegantly, and that is that value and its exchange are separate by design. Okay, so if I want to give Bradley over there a cup of coffee, I mean, because you're over there, I'll have to give it to Carol, and then Carol will have to give it to David, and David will have to give it to Taryn, who will then have to give it to Bradley. Okay, and that's on purpose. And if we use like a metaphor that I heard someone say the other day, which I thought was quite funny, and that was that I have a cup of coffee, and if I want, Brett says, "Hey, Sarid, can I have a drink of your coffee?" Sure. I'll take a drink of my coffee. I spit it in Carol's mouth, who spits it in David's mouth, who spits it in Taryn's mouth, who spits it in Brad's mouth. And so Bradley wanted my coffee. I have it. Carol got to taste it, as did David and Taryn. Okay, and that's the banking system. The banking system are the people who are tasting my coffee. And it's my coffee, and I want Brad to have it, so why should the bank get to taste my coffee? And so they have this, you have the value, you have something that is of value, and you want to send it somewhere. And so why not just send it directly to the person instead of having to hop through these intermediaries and watch the amount of value that you have decrease the closer it gets to this destination? This doesn't make sense to me, and blockchain solves this very nicely. Okay, what about control? Well, financial institutions are in complete control of all the money in the circulation. Most of the money that's in circulation is digital money. It's not cryptocurrency. It's digital, meaning it's normally it's zeros and numbers on a computer screen. And so that can be changed and manipulated. But we do have, obviously, money that's also in circulation, physical money. And this money is less in control. But the computer money, the money that's in computer systems and the banking network, this is in the control of the bank. Okay? And I've seen this many times during my work, and that is centralization is really bad, especially when it fails. Because, I mean, most banks, they'll have something called a HA setup, which is called high availability, which means that you have something that's important here, and you have a bunch of people who want it, and what happens if this breaks? Well, then you create a mirror of this one and you put it here, and so you can send people through either node A or node B. And this is called high availability. It's because it's highly available when you need it. But it's still centralized, because typically, if the electricity goes on and the generators aren't hooked up, then stuff's going to stop working. And this is a really bad idea. And this is another thing that is addressed very nicely using blockchain, which is a decentralized technology. Compliance. What about having access to our money? Governments control our money. We've already talked about that. What about withdrawal limits? I read a headline not that long ago. In China, I believe it was, the government put limits on how much money that you could withdraw from the ATM. So let's say you have 100,000 yuan in the bank that you could only take out maybe, I don't know, $100 worth or a few $100s worth. And if you wanted more, you had to know that beforehand so that you could tell the bank, I'm going to come to the bank because let's say I need to buy a bicycle, so I'll need $1,000 worth of yuan. And then you do that, then you can typically get it. But they slow it down, and they slow it down on purpose. So we have withdrawal limits. We also have compliance requirements. Everything is moving to this centralized model, which gives an enormous amount of power to a select few group of people. Okay, and so, for example, let's say that I have money in the bank, but unless I spend that money on certain things, then they're not going to give me that money. It sounds a little bit science fiction, but it's not entirely science fiction. We'll touch on that again in a minute. All right, Carol. Okay, legacy banking. Let's talk about the banking. So we have a few things here. Corruption, security, accountability, decentralization, transparency, integrity. All really, really important points I think we could all, okay, Carol, touch upon. I've seen a lot of this stuff with my work, the shadow banking. Has anyone here heard of shadow banking? No, it's a parallel banking sector that is normally reserved for the hyper wealthy. A friend of mine in Copenhagen, he's a tax attorney, and he had a lot of customers who would operate in these realms, and it's like the back door in the banking sectors, where they would have like the front office where things would, they would happen during the lights of day, but you also had the back office operations, and everything happened on the down low. Nothing was written down, and everything was hidden. Very, very shady. It operates in the shadows, hence the expression shadow banking. We also have security breaches. I mean, this stuff happened all the time. I was woken up on a relatively regular basis, at least once a month, to come into one of our customers and clean up a mess. And some of the stuff that happened was really, really bad. Serious leaks, theft, very, very severe e-crime. We had a very big customer, the name I can't say, but they were attacked by something called an information thief. It was a piece of computer virus that ran on people's computers, and it would live in the browser in the same process as the browser, and it would beautifully, unbelievably beautifully and elegantly dissect the communication, even when it was operating within like an SSL tunnel, because it happened underneath the encryption layer. And so I could log onto my bank, and I could transfer money to Rebecca, for example, and I would say $100, and everything was beautiful. It looked like $100. I would go to my receipts, and I'd say, yeah, I just transferred $100 to Rebecca. But my bank would call me 10 minutes later and say, hey, Sarid, did you just transfer $50,000 to Panama? And I was a bit like, why, George, no, I didn't. Thank you for letting me know. And this man in the browser malware would just manipulate everything that I would see. And it was happening all the times, and the banks never spoke about it. They never spoke about it. We have insider trading. This happens a lot as well. You have a friend. I'm in legal, and I have a friend who is sitting. He's like maybe the trading desk in equities, and we're good friends. And we go home and we have a beer, whatnot. And he says to me, "Tomorrow on the books, we have a really big order coming in. We have 70 million coming in to buy silver futures contracts." I mean, that's a really nice piece of information. So I go home and I put in my pending to buy silver futures contracts. The next day, the real order comes in, and I'm sped off into profit in very short order. We also have subprime mortgage debt crisis. I mean, this is completely absurd. This, excuse me, not Corona. And this was really, really horrifying. And the reason it's horrifying is because subprime mortgage, they were loans that anyone could get. If I was a bartender in the Midwest earning, let's say, $8 an hour, I could still buy 8 houses because the way the product was structured, it was very, very easy to get. And so what they would do, even when the ratings of these loans were really, really poor, I mean, you have A, like Moody's would rank them as these are Class A products, and they would go B, C, and then it would get a little bit shady. What would they do? Well, they would take a bunch of the crappy ones, and they would bundle them together with a handful of decent ones, and they would sell it on. And that went on and on and on and on. And so you had a house of cards where, the floor started to get wet, and the cards at the bottom got wet and started to tweak a little bit. And all of a sudden, everything crashed to the ground because people started to default. People couldn't pay off their mortgages. Everything was overdue. Late payments across the board because people couldn't afford it because they were outrageous loans. And the whole market collapsed overnight. We'll talk more about that in a second. We have money laundering. We have bribes. We have bailouts and bail-ins. This is fun. Let's have a look at what this is. A bailout. We all know what a bailout is. This happened extensively during the 2008-2009 banking crisis. And this is essentially the bank takes the taxpayers' money and they give it to the banks. And they say, oh, that's a shame you lost $6 billion. Here's $6 billion so that you can continue to operate. And so they take the money. Thank you very much. And this gives them enough liquidity on the books so that they continue to operate their business. And we have something else. Has anyone heard of a bail-in? This is a very, very dirty trick, and this exists. A bail-in is a little bit different, and this is as I mentioned earlier, when you put your money in the bank, it's no longer yours. And so if I give my money to the bank and the bank goes bust, they still have to give me the value of the money that I put as my initial deposit. What can they do? Well, they can give me stock of their bank. Would you like to have stock of a bank that's going bust? I don't think so, but this is what it's called. And so what they do, typically there'll be a limit, maybe I think in most places about $100,000. Well, that's one number. And they'll take, if you have anything over that, they'll just scoop that and they'll put it into in an account, and they'll use the money that they scoop off the top, they all the cream that they take off, and they'll use that to keep the books liquid so that they can operate. It doesn't mean you lose your money, but in return, they'll give you bank stock that you have that you can't sell because no one wants to buy it because it's a really crappy bank and they're going out of business. But on the books, the numbers match. And this was discussed in Parliament in Canada about a year ago as an option. Okay, security. This is a big one. Most of the banking systems that we had to test, they were legacy. They'd been around for a very, very long time. Maybe they were running on mainframes. They were written in COBOL, which is a really old mainframe programming language. And it was the core of a lot of the mortgage, a lot of the old instrument code. It was the core of it, so you can't just remove it. And so you have to leave it. And they're inherently so insecure that all you can do is put them behind 12 firewalls and hope that no one ever gets into them. Okay, so it's really bad, typically really, really bad. Not bad, it's very old code. Before security was a problem, before hackers existed. Okay, we also, the reason that we got called in typically was because hacks, they never got reported, or very rarely got reported to the authorities because it was very, very detrimental for the reputation of the bank. So we'd have to come in, we'd have to clean things up, we'd try and have to find out how this happened, and then they would, okay, well, we lost $300,000, that kind of sucks, but rather that than having our bank name on the headlines. And they often have poor security practices. This is very common because, if you're a programmer and you've written like a library that can read a file from a shared drive, for example, no matter the infrastructure, what the infrastructure is like a very nice abstraction, a layer of abstraction there, and it's been working for 10 years, so why would I change it? So you just import the library and you use it without realizing that there are, maybe there's remote file inclusion vulnerabilities or local file inclusion vulnerabilities in the code. You just use it without really knowing what it's doing. And this can cause all sorts of problems. Okay, so poor adherence to regulation, because that stuff's not really legal. You have to keep a tight ship, obviously. And as a result, you see cover-ups. So a lot of things go on where banks would get hacked. Maybe someone in the bank would speak to a friend whose sister's brother's aunt is a journalist, and they kind of talk about it at dinner. And so it gets out, and they write this rogue story about this bank getting hacked. And so they make up some bogus story that will kind of put that story to bed. It's there's a lot of that, unfortunately. Okay, accountability. During the subprime debt crisis, $8 trillion of taxpayer money was paid out. And here's the beauty. 1.6 billion of that was given to the bankers, who did a really good job at making such grade A products and selling them to their customers. Did anyone go to prison? One guy went to prison, one person, and he didn't really do anything. He was kind of at the wrong place at the wrong time. There is zero accountability. And why is that? Well, that's because all these bankers, they all sit at the tall tables, they're all buddies, and they know the politicians. They lobby the politicians, the Democratic Party, the Republicans, whatever. And so they are all indebted to each other. They're doing each other's favor. And as a result, you can't bite the hand that's feeding you. And so they just make things disappear. All right. There's no transparency. Who owns the control and the audit trails of what goes on in the banks? The banks do. What about the books? Who owns the ledgers? Who owns all the ledgers in a bank? The banks do. So if there's a transaction in that's a little bit ugly, wouldn't it just be a lot easier just to not to show it? It would be. And then you have the Open Banking Data Transparency Act. and it doesn't really make sense because you have to show your data. But if you control the data, you can't. You can't. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so there is no transparency. All right. Here we talked a lot about this. We have this one here: overcomplicate the simple and provide you with an expensive solution. Transfers are really, really slow. If I want to send money to my mother, who lives in Montana, it'll take 3 to 5 working days. That's a really long time. It's an electric network. It should be relatively quick. And there are fees for everything. I mean, you have a fee for this and a fee for that, and on this day, fees are even higher. If you trade currency markets, the exchange markets, I think it's on Wednesdays on the rollover, so from midnight till the next day, you pay 2 times swaps. And so normally you want to get out of your positions before the clocks tick on Wednesday. So you have to be. There's a lot going on. Yeah, we spoke about this. We've spoken about this as well, where you have value and the means of exchanging are separate by design, because this creates a nice niche for the bank. Okay, and so now what's going on? Well, new systems are being built and tested. So I think a lot of people are well aware of the fact that there's something going on in the banking. There was an infrastructure bill in the US that was passed for a dizzying amount of money. A lot of this money is going to be used to change the way the banking system works. There's a lot of, you kind of hear a lot of central bankers talking about a digital pound or a digital dollar or a digital this or that. Something is cooking. We don't really know what, because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of uncertainty about what this new system that is emerging is all about. We have this thing, the elephant in the room, the looming global collapse that's just around the corner. And if you have half a brain cell and you consider what's going on, and you see how much money has been printed and has been pushed out into the circulation around the world, and how quickly that's happened, and how the markets are all going up, but we're in the middle of a pandemic, most people can see that something's going to happen, I think. We have hyperinflation, and so our money is losing its value really, really quickly. We have inflation. I don't know what the numbers are, but they are, I'll be bold enough to say we have double-digit inflation figures per annum. And this list could go on forever and ever. Okay, the future. There's also this talk about social credit systems. What's that all about? We have this unbelievable facial recognition software in China that can identify a person even while wearing masks. We have this talk about these in Europe. They're pretty into these like these passports, these medical passports that you have to show to go around. It's quite a significant pushback, but they're still pushing. And I think it is an attempt to bring everything together: health records, financial records, and much else. We also have nudging, which is something that I see happening in the future, and that is that once we're all using digital pounds and francs and yen and whatnot, I have more value for my money if I spend it on this sector in contrast to spending it within this sector. So if I'm buying books, for example, maybe the value of my money has less value. But if I'm spending it on traditional consumer goods, then it's almost like maybe 120% of what I have. I can buy much more stuff. And so there's this notion of nudging, which has been around for a long time, and I think this is going to encourage us to spend our money on certain things and others, in contrast to others. We have this, which we spoke about earlier, which is encouraging consumerism via negative interest rates. Negative interest rates are really, really bad ideas. As a matter of fact, I heard an economist once refer to them as the STD of monetary policy, because, essentially it forces people to take their savings and spend it so that they don't lose their savings, which is quite sad. It's nice to have a nest egg for whatever reason, school tuitions, whatnot. Okay, and so, maybe we're here, a little bit sick, a little bit nauseous about what's going on. There's a lot going on. The next slide. there is hope. And it is my belief that blockchain technology it's a valid candidate that will solve a lot of the issues that we discussed here. Okay, Carol, let's get the good news on.
I want the good news. This is too depressing.
Cool. All right, so here's the agenda. We have some problems that we really, really need solutions to. We touched on some of the problems. There are other ones that we'll touch on in a minute. What's Bitcoin? I think everyone knows what Bitcoin is, but we'll talk a little bit about what it actually is. Who created Bitcoin? We're going to talk about why it was created. This is probably the most important part of Bitcoin, is why it was actually created. We're going to talk about blockchain. I mean, what is blockchain? Might be a little bit confusing, but it's actually quite simple. We're going to talk a little bit about mining as well, because this is a lot of people who are not into Bitcoin. They say it's because it's environmentally unfriendly, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, some of the problems. We have centralization, which we touched upon. Single point of failure. It's just generally a really bad idea. So we want decentralization. This decentralization is the antithesis to that, where you have something that is vulnerable. Instead of leaving it one place, you spread it out. I mean, that makes sense. Like they say, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Okay, we have mutability. We have these ledgers within the banks. Okay, if I want to change a ledger and say, instead of that guy sending me $100, I want that to be $100 million. And so wouldn't it be nice to be able to ensure that that was not possible? Obviously, it's not possible, but there are... blockchain is a great solution to make sure that is not possible. We have censorship as well, which is a huge problem at the moment. A really big problem. So we want things to be open. We want discussions to occur. Again, blockchain is a great solution for this. Secrecy. We have things, we have ongoings, we have the shadow banking, which we want to hide because it's really ugly and it's actually really, really illegal. But we're getting paid so much money that we want to keep doing it anyway. We want to bring all that secrecy out into the open, and we want everything to be transparent. We have reckless banks. We want people to be accountable. Blockchain doesn't do that, but it can show us when something's wrong, etc., etc. Okay, so how can blockchain help us? Well, blockchain is decentralized by nature. What does that even mean? Well, it means that you have something, instead of having it one place, you put it loads of different places at the same time. So if I have 100,000 rupee in my pocket, and it's all in my pocket, maybe I could take 25,000, put it in this one, 25 in this one, and then 25 in each pocket. So if I'm walking down the street and someone pickpockets me, maybe I lose 25,000 only. In a really bad situation, maybe he gets both hands in my pocket, so I lose half of my money. But he doesn't get all of it. So this is what we want to accomplish via decentralization. Immutability, the inability to change something. Some things we do not want to change. We want them, when they occur, we want them to be carved in stone. Okay, this is really important. And this is important because the whole concept of audit trails, it's an important one. When things occur, we want to be able to refer to them from the future and say, what happened on that day between those two people? What actually happened? Then you can go back and you can look at it and you can verify that it happened. Okay, censorship is not possible. And transparency, I think I'm going to go into these in detail, so yeah. Okay, so what is Bitcoin? I made this meaning up, and I tried to encompass as much as possible. Maybe I'm leaving something. But it is essentially a decentralized, open source, not always, but mostly open source, peer-to-peer computer network that facilitates the exchange and storage of value in a trustless and robust environment that ensures transparency and immutability of verifiable transactional data. That sounds a bit of a promise for the future, doesn't it? Okay, Carol. Okay, let's pull that down a little bit and let's focus on these individually. Well, we have decentralized. We touched upon that. Physically non-local. We have open source. What does open source even mean? Well, you have closed source. In the software world, you have closed source and you have open source. Closed source is Microsoft. open source is Linux. Okay, so you can read the source code of your operating system if you should feel so inclined for a Linux operating system, but you can't do it for Microsoft. You can do what's referred to as reverse engineering, which is much more difficult. Okay, so open source, you can download the source code to Bitcoin and you can read it, and you can see, what are these guys doing? What's actually, when someone is mining, what's actually going on? And you can go and you can read the source code. Peer-to-peer, I mean, what does that mean? That means that I get to give my coffee to Bradley. Carol doesn't get to taste it. Davida and Taryn, they don't get to taste it either. Brad gets all of my coffee. We have value, which is measurable worth. We have something called trustless. And this is really important. Assume for a second that you want to do a transaction with a person you don't really trust. I mean, how would you do that? They've got the goods, you've got the money. I mean, you're kind of like this. Okay, well, you put the goods in my hand and I put my money in your hand at the same time. You ready? Okay, you first. No, you first. Okay, we'll do it at the same, on three. 1, 2, 3. I mean, it's really difficult to do, and it's really difficult to get right. But the system blockchain is built in such a way that you don't have to trust anyone. The guy could be a serial killer, and you could still do business with him, and he can't cheat you. He can cheat you, but due to a flaw in the blockchain. Okay, we have transparency. So the shadow banking, all the transactions that occur in the shadow banking realm, you can't hide them. You can't like hold your hand, oh, that block's really ugly. Oh, there's a bit of fraud there. Oh, there's some child trafficking payments. Let's get rid of those. You can't do that. It's all in the open, and everybody can look at them. They even have these things called like blockchain explorers, where you can take an ID, you can search for that ID, and you can see all the information about that specific transaction. Okay, there's nothing can be hidden. We have immutability. The transactions can't be changed. The example I use where I'd like to get $1 million instead of $100, you can't do that. I can't go back and change that, because by the time I realize that, hey, I'd like $1 million instead of $100, maybe there are 2 more blocks on the chain, so you can't go back. Going back and changing any of the information in a historical block will be reflected, because all of the new blocks that are stacked on top of that will no longer be valid, and that invalidity will raise the flag. Okay, and so essentially we can validate and we can verify every transaction that has ever been placed in the Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is great. This is really good stuff. Okay, so here we have like a few examples of Bitcoins, of cryptocurrencies. We have Bitcoin, which is this was the first one. Actually, there was one that was released about 10 years before Bitcoin called, what's it called? BitGold? Did anyone know that? About 10 years prior. But this was the first one that actually hit the ground running. The market was mature enough to embrace it. We have Ethereum. Bitcoin is virtual gold, people refer it to as. Ethereum it's a distributed software platform. Okay, so this is like a software stack. You can create like full-blown commercial grade applications on the Ethereum blockchain. They have smart contracts, which is essentially a smart contract is an executable contract. And so if I want to engage in a contract with someone, we can make some conditions, some triggers, and when those conditions are met, the contract executes. It's very clever. Then we have Ripple, which is Ripple is, it's another one. It's more the banker's cryptocurrency, I would say, but it's a remarkable technology. We have Bitcoin Cash, another one. We have Polkadot, Doge, which is a meme coin. And then there are, I don't know, how many cryptocurrency projects are there out there? 2,000, 3,000? Loads. Many, many, many. Okay, Carol. And who created Bitcoin? Well, there's a lot of speculation about who created Bitcoin. The name Satoshi Nakamoto seems to come up a lot as the person or group of persons who created it and who wrote the white paper. This is the definition from Wikipedia. But no one really knows. Someone's tried to claim credit for it, but I don't really know how that went. Okay. Okay, so I mean, why was Bitcoin created? This is probably the most important part. Bitcoin and any other blockchain currency it's transparent, which means that you can look into each and every block. None of them can be hidden. They're immutable. You can't change them. They're decentralized. So, I can't. If I want to commit fraud, I have to compromise 51% of everybody's blockchains that they have on their clients. That's really difficult, especially when you have hundreds of thousands or millions, hundreds of millions of people using it. Then I'll have to take, if I have 100 million people, I'll have to take 51 million computers, compromise them, do my dirty work, and get that done. Highly unplausible. Probably not going to happen. So decentralization is very good for that reason. And we also have this, which is another one I pointed to, and that was we marry value with the exchange of value. There is no intermediary that takes a cut of the cake. Obviously, you have to pay a small fee, and the small fee is important because the fee that I pay goes to an individual or an entity or a group of individuals or entity who verify my transaction, which is a good thing. We want to keep this blockchain secure, and so we are willing to pay a small, sometimes quite large, transactional fee for this extra validation. Okay, we have, it's a store of value. So we can keep, on my telephone, I can keep my cryptocurrencies, my Bitcoin, whatever. Anybody can access it. Even the Bedouins in Northern Africa, they can have a smartphone, and they can have a little bit of Ethereum or ETH, or they can have some Bitcoins. Anyone can access it. It's uncensorable, cheaper than banks. And if your crypto is in your wallet, then it's yours, and then it's safe, unless you do something silly, or unless you're cheated into giving it to somebody else. But when it's on the exchange, it's still a bit of a gray area. Okay, and you can't prevent people from using it. You can turn off the internet, and that kind of sucks. But that's a greater problem. But that's one of the main ways to stop people from using cryptocurrencies is you turn the internet off, which no one will accept. Okay, so what is a blockchain? I mean, a blockchain is, you have to separate the words blockchain, and you have block, and you have chain. Okay, a distributed peer-to-peer list, which is the chain, of blocks of data, each containing information about its own transaction, as well as verifiable information about the previous block's transaction. Okay, super simple, actually. Okay, Carol. And so we have, this is a super simplified example of a blockchain. This is a graphic I found on the internet. Okay, this is the first one. This is called the Genesis block. So this is the first one ever minted, ever created. And so there is no previous hash. On the previous slide, there was information about the previous block. This is the hash here. Okay, so we have this block here. It contains some information. The information, we want to create a signature for the information in the block. And so what we'll do is we will run all the information through something called a hash function. This hash function takes all the data, puts it in a one-way. It's not an encryption function. It's a hash function, which means that you cannot decrypt it. And it creates a signature, okay? In Bitcoin, they use, I think it's SHA-256, so 256 bits of information. And they take this information, and we're going to look, if I can get my computer going, it's a sizable piece of information. It's very big, and it's really, really unique. And so the likelihood of something called a collision, where two different values producing the same hash is mathematically not possible. It's been proven using older hash functions, but SHA, most of the other ones, it hasn't been done before. Okay, so we have this information, we hash it. This is the hash 1Z8F. This goes into the hash of this one. So this is the hash of the block information plus the hash of this one. We create a new hash. We put it here. Okay, and so, I mean, if anything in here is changed, then this one and the ones after will be invalid. And so this is how you can validate if there has been anything called any kind of manipulation of any of the blocks. And typically, if you, for example, assuming that we have like a blockchain and we introduce some new functionality and we say, and I say to, let's say a bigger number of us say, let's implement this new code base. You can do that, and then you just branch out on a new fork. This is called a hard fork. This is when you actually just branch off and create a new fork. You probably heard that, the hard fork term before. Okay, so what's in a block? This is all the information that is in a block. Okay, we have the hash. That was the hash we saw on the previous slide. Okay, we have a lot of information here. Okay, we have timestamps, the height. This says something about how many blocks are stacked on top of this one. We have the miner information. This one's unknown. And you can see this one's unknown. Difficulty, this is a computational difficulty of the challenge. We have the Merkle root, which is essentially, it tells us how transactions are organized within the block. And we have a lot of other information. We have a nonce, okay, so a single value. And we have something here, which is, this is a transaction of volume. This is about 1,545 Bitcoins. We have a reward. So this block was mined. Okay, the reward was 6.25 Bitcoins. Okay. You can see here, see all of these leading zeros here. These are important to pay attention to, and we'll come back to that in just a second. Okay, Carol. Okay, what's in a transaction? Well, we have the hash for that. If it was confirmed or not, dates, times, and lots of others. We have some of the values related to the transaction size, how many times it was validated, and so on. And normally you can take 1 megabytes worth of transactions are stored in each block, and so the number of transactions can vary. You can have fewer big transactions, or you can have more small transactions that contain more information. Okay, and so why is hashing needed? I spoke about this a little bit earlier. What is hashing even? Wish I could get my computer on so I could show you some examples. But hashing, should we try?
I'll try.
Yeah, okay. And so hashing is, sometimes you want to, has everyone here heard of a digital signature? Yeah? So you have, for example, you have a document. I wrote a document. I want to share this document with my peers, but I want them to be able to validate that the document is the same document that I wrote. And so what I'll do is I'll share the document, and below the document, I'll share the cryptographic signature, which is essentially, it's a hash of the document. And so if the document changes, even one bit of information changes, the hash is completely different. It's called the avalanche effect, where you have, if you have a document and you change even the tiniest bit of information, not only the front of the hash changes, not the middle, not the back, but everything changes. So like there's like an avalanche of changes in the hash because the value is completely different, okay? And so we want to be able to validate the validity of these. Yeah, okay, we've already, yeah, it's being used to validate other blocks, of course. When we run through the blockchain, we want to validate the historical transactions to make sure that they're valid. This is where hashing is being employed. But it's really, really difficult to do. And the reason it's difficult is because if there's a lot of data that needs to be hashed, the computational overhead is significant. And so if I want to guess a hash, which I have to do in order to mine a block of Bitcoin, I have to generate a hash of a block that has a very, very specific signature, leading zeros. And this is super difficult. Okay, so what is mining? We've all heard about this mining. Has anyone here not heard of mining in relation to crypto? No, it's a common term. It's thrown out there all the time. And mining is essentially generating new blocks. So that's what we want to do. We want to generate new blocks. And we have this concept of, there's a big argument about people saying, but mining requires an awful lot of energy. Is that true? It is true. And I just want to show you why it's true. Let's see if we can get my... sorry, I just wrote a very, very simple program that uses, I'm going to use the real hash function that's used in Bitcoin, SHA-256. It generates a very long string containing a lot of information. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to run through this super quickly, and I'm generating a random number. I'm encoding it, and I'm hashing it, and then I'm returning that value into this variable hash, okay? And what I'm doing, I'm going to continue to generate a new hash until the hash that I generate starts with 4 zeros. As we saw in the example of the block, we saw there were, how many? Like, I think 15, I can't remember how many, but there are many, many zeros. That takes a lot of horsepower to do. So I'm just going to run this very quickly. See, that went pretty quick, didn't it? There was 4,011 attempts at generating a hash that started with 4 zeros. But let's go up and increase that a little bit. Let's do one more and see how that slows down. Okay, wow. That time, we jumped from 4,011 to 469,659 guesses at generating a hash, now with 5 leading zeros. Okay? Let's go one more. We'll let it run. And that took just under 1 second with the 5 leading zeros. Let's let this run. It might take a moment. But this is essentially what mining is. And a lot of people, the people who are involved in mining, they have, excuse me, they have warehouses of computer code running on specially created microchips called miners that are optimized to run on special microchips called GPUs that can outperform a traditional central processing unit on a computer. And they spend staggering amounts of money because you can earn a lot of money on generating Bitcoins if you're able to be the first one to do it. Okay, so let's look at this one here. It took 26 seconds, and it guessed 17 million times. Yeah, and so if we go back to this example here, where are we? Here. So if we go back to this block, they can't see it? Of course, because it's like really difficult. I mean, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 leading zeros. That's huge, because if you consider the mathematical complexity of the SHA-256 hashing function, it's very high. In contrast to others like, for example, MD5 or some of the, or even HMAC is difficult, but a lot of, I mean, the one that's used for Bitcoin, it's very intensive. And being able to generate these, I mean, my computer could guess, I don't know, for years and not guess it. And so you need very, very specialized computers running simultaneously, hundreds or thousands of them, guessing these challenges. So the question then becomes, so is mining Bitcoin environmentally friendly? No, it's not. Obviously, it really isn't. Unless you have a mining facility in Iceland and it's running on what do you call it? Yeah. Or you have it running in the middle of the desert and it's running on a solar panel, something like that. But it requires an awful lot of calculating power. And so this is a problem for Bitcoin. And this is addressed in some of the newer projects. And they use something called proof of stake instead. And this solves the problem because you don't have to guess. You just have to take the cryptocurrency that you have and you stake it, and your your deposit or your cryptocurrency that is put out there is used. If your crypto is used to validate a transaction, then you get a reward. But if the transaction that you validate is incorrect, then you get punished, and they take some of your money from you, which is fair enough. Okay. If you try to cheat. So if this is almost infeasible, but if, let's say that Stacia had a transaction coming in and she said, yeah, I'll give you 20% if you kind of sort this out. It's not going to happen. This is very non-realistic. I say, okay, cool. It comes in, I see that, and I kind of like, I twist it just the right way. I say, cool, you got that, and everything's good. But when it's validated, they'll say, whoa, that was wrong. That's not good. We're going to take a big chunk of your, let's say, ETH. And so it can get expensive, especially these days when ETH is, what, 2,800 bucks. Yeah, it's just a way to stop people from cheating. All right.
Yeah, I have a question. So, because a lot of people are like, yeah, blockchain, crypto is not sustainable and all of that. And you said that new projects are already kind of, how do you see that in the future, you know? And how much we as a community, I mean, should be aware of the good ones and the bad ones and the ones that we should be, if we want to trade, the ones that we should support and the ones that we should definitely avoid because these guys don't give a shit.
Sure. I mean, it's an anecdote. I went to a crypto meetup with Bradley the other day in Canggu, and there was a guy there, and he was so into the NFT space. It was dizzying. I left there and my hair was blown back. And the takeaway was, we looked at each other and I said, wow, NFT is full of scam artists. That was the takeaway I had. And I was a bit like, oh my goodness. I really felt that it was a space filled with people who were looking to get rich quick. And why that isn't true necessarily, you have to be careful and you have to do due diligence. And there are ICOs being launched all the time. People saying, great product. Here's our white paper. Here are our values. Here are our milestones. Here's the roadmap. This is where we're going. These are the problems we want to solve. These are the benefits for you for getting involved and buying buying some of our liquidity. You just have to be you have to be so careful, really, really careful. And that's why, as when we get to the trading bit in a while, I mean, get in and then get out. If you buy Bitcoins at $300 and it's at $36,000 or $68,000, I mean, who would hold on to it hoping it would go to the moon? I mean, I'd take my cash and I'd go. So you have to be realistic. You really have to be realistic. And finding projects that are doing really good things. Luke Jansen here at school, he was involved in a project. I think it's an Australian project with some guys that that created a blockchain project that was offsetting carbon credits. That's kind of a cool thing. And there are other people who are doing projects where they're planting trees, and there are a lot of other projects going. So you have to find something that appeals to you. Maybe you just want like a cat that's going, and maybe that's good enough for you. But maybe there are other people who have some different ideals, and they want to do something that they can ethically align with. And so you have to invest time in picking out the needle in the haystack, because sometimes it feels a little bit like that. There is so much hype. These projects, these NFT projects, any project, they start up and they put huge amounts of money into marketing. Huge amounts of money. Because they want to market it, they want to get influencers involved who can say good things about it and wear the T-shirt when they're on stage and and walk with the merchandise and whatnot. And so it's like trying to ride down a single track in a hailstorm with no goggles. You really have to it look like that, try and find the single track, because it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. And I don't want to spend every waking hour in front of the computer reading these news feeds and stuff. So I just find something that appeals to me from a technological perspective. Some of the players that are established, like Ethereum, is a really good project because it's decentralized software. It's a software platform. People can build really cool things, and thousands of people have already built really cool things on the Ethereum blockchain. But there are other products that have come out, other blockchains that solve a lot of the problems that plague Ethereum, like speed and fees and stuff like that. And so you have to, it's difficult. It's really difficult.
I was just going to add to that, if I may.
Please.
All the kind of problems that plague, like the kind of human problems that plague the legacy banking system that Sarid so eloquently spoke about, are also present in the blockchain world. And I would add that because it's unregulated and because there are lots of vulnerabilities, both in the code and just in people's knowledge, there's an asymmetry of people's knowledge. There's actually, like Sarid just said, a lot of perils to avoid for. And so I would suggest that when if you're looking at a place to kind of just park your money, you look really closely at what the potential is for manipulation of that software. Even if it's slight, it's probably going to be exploited at some point. And I would say I'm even more skeptical than Sarid in this, in that Ethereum and these what are called virtual machine blockchains that use smart contracts or proof of stake. These are all systems which can be exploited. The likelihood is low, but that doesn't mean it can't happen and won't happen. And recently there was like a big hack or exploit rather of what's called a cross bridge to the tune of about $350 million. And one of the VCs just came in and basically plugged the hole, which shows how these things can be manipulated on both sides, not just exploited, but also how the protocols can roll back if there's enough incentive to do so. So I'm happy to speak to people about this because Sarid, has the ability. He's a trader, so he can get in and out, and that's what we're here to learn. But if you're less inclined to kind of be in and out of positions, then I think it's really important to really do a deep dive on the security and the feasibility of these protocols. So,
I agree. I totally agree. And I think it goes back to the old saying, never put your money in something you don't understand. And I think like blockchain and a lot of the stuff that circulates it's quite elusive. And like we're all busy, some people work with it full time, so they have the time and they pay themselves to study about whatever's going on. But you have to understand it. And this is why a lot of people like lose their money in their cryptos because they forget the password phrase or whatever, or there's so many ways it can go bad. You have to understand it. It's just like, if I want to buy gold bars, I don't take them and kind of like just put them in the front garden, just put them right there. It's a lovely place to store them. Someone will steal them. And so you have to understand, okay, how do I store gold securely? And so you have to understand the risks around gold, owning it, storing it, being robbed, floods, and all these other things. And crypto's the same. It's just like a virtual cognitive endeavor, I think, where you have to understand it on an intellectual level, like, okay, what do I do? And then convert that into like practical, like sheet for like, okay, I got to do this, and when I've done that, then I got to do this, just to safeguard yourself. And remember, like we go back to one of the very first slides, that is, trust nobody. Trust absolutely nobody. If you've had a nice trade and there's money in the account, and you don't plan on trading that in the distant future, pull it off, put it in the wallet. But even when it's in a wallet, it's not safe. The guy who created a MetaMask, he was a dad at school here, a really sweet guy, Aaron Davis, very humble, super nerdy, clever guy. And he spends all of his time improving MetaMask to keep people out of it, because people are they're trying to get robbed all the time. Every day I get emails from spam from people saying, your MetaMask wallet is at risk. Please click on this link and follow the instructions. And the instructions are likely, send us your password phrase, which is 24 words. And people do this because they don't understand what they're dealing with. Password phrase, okay, isn't that this long? And then they type it in there, and then they wonder why everything's been stolen. It's you really have to understand it. And the people in this space, some of them are, IT criminals. They are super nasty, super nasty, and they have no morals or remorse. They don't even know who you are. They don't care. They want your cash. Matter of fact, I saw a scam the other day where there was like a live feed for some crypto event, and someone got a hold of it, and they took this authoritative figure in the industry and they wrapped it. They wrapped it in this graphic that said, what was it called? doubleeth.cc or something. And you click on this link to the website, and it said, "Hey, we're super excited about Ethereum. We want to spread the love, and Ethereum wants to share some of their ETH with the environment. So send us your Ethereum, and we'll send you 2 times back." You think like, I'm sure that someone did it. Someone lost all of their ETH, or some of it at least, and it's really sad. And so again, it's because they're not understanding what they're dealing with. So you just have to be careful. Common sense is always good. Or if you don't know, ask a friend. Does this look like a good idea? I can send like 2 gold bars and I get back 4. And then, think for sure. All right. Okay, so there was the little demo for this. Did I have anything else I wanted to show there? I don't have my glasses, a bit difficult to see. No, it's okay, that's fine. Okay, what time is it? It's 10 past. So okay, we're going to talk about something now. It gets a little bit nerdy, but it applies to trading, and it's really important to understand. And I think once you understand this, and you've seen it on a price chart of an asset, and you can use this trading model to trade anything, equities, futures, options, commodities, currencies, crypto, absolutely anything. Once you understand it, it'll put you so far ahead of all of your friends and all of the others in the industry, because you'll understand what it is that is making asset prices move. Okay, so we'll start with that. Hopefully we can get finished. I think maybe if we're... Oh man, I can't read anything. It's got to be one of these buttons. Are they reading glasses? Oh, that might be... Oh, okay, did it. Thanks, Stacia. Okay. Oops, wrong way. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to talk about some really cool things. Well, I think it's cool. Liquidity. What is liquidity? Super important to understand. What makes markets move? So equities markets, all the things that we spoke about. What is price actually showing us? When we look at a candlestick chart, what is it telling us? There's actually so much information in a chart, but most people don't notice it. But if you train your eye, you notice, rather, you can teach yourself to understand the narrative. It's a story that's being told. Okay, so identifying liquidity imbalances. We're going to get into what all this is. Liquidity exploration patterns. Let's get started. Okay, so what is liquidity? Okay, liquidity is it's the ability to buy or sell something without affecting its price. So if I have a market and small cap crypto is a really good example. If I take as little as maybe $1,000 or $5,000, and if I buy tokens for that, sometimes the price just jumps up really, really far. That means because it's very illiquid. There's not a lot of liquidity. There's not a lot of supply and circulation. And so when I buy it, the price just jumps up. Okay, and so we have some really good examples of liquid assets. I think we can agree that Bitcoin is becoming liquid. It's in no way as liquid as the Euro American dollar marketplace, but it's certainly a very liquid asset. Then we have illiquid assets like small cap cryptos. We also have a friend, actually he's not a friend of a friend, and he collects watches. And he bought a watch at a garage sale. I think he paid maybe 5,000 euros in Switzerland, and it's worth like 30,000 euros. I mean, that's incredible. But it doesn't, even though it's worth 30,000 euros, it doesn't mean that there's always going to be a buyer for it. He can't always sell it. And so it's perceived value until he gets 30,000 euros for it. Okay, we also have collectible wines. Some people collect wines. And these are illiquid products because there's not always someone who's willing to buy your commodity at the price you're asking. So this can create some discrepancies in price as well. Okay, and so what is making prices move? You see, I mean, you look at Bitcoin or anything. I mean, the S&P is another great example where you see prices race north, and then the next day they race down, they drop. And you think, I mean, what's causing all of this buying and selling? Well, you have what I refer to as willing buying and selling. And buying does not necessarily move the price of an asset. It's the willing buying and selling that moves it. Okay, so you have people who are showing intent to buy an asset, and the intent is in the form of a pending order, typically a limit, a buy or a sell stop, or a limit order. And this intention, I have this money, I have $1,000, I put it in the market, and I put that in there, and these 50,000 people, they want to do the same thing. So everyone puts 1,000, 5,000. Maybe this guy, he wants to buy like $1 million worth of whatever. So he puts it in. I mean, there is so much liquidity down there, enormous amounts of liquidity. And so when the price of the asset comes down, races down to this pool of liquidity, there'll be such a race to buy it that there'll be like crocodiles in a pit where there's a piece of meat hanging. Everyone's like, I want a bite of that. It's coming down. It's cheap, and then they grab a hold of it, and there'll be a race to do it. And that racing will cause the price to just spike up like this. And when you see that, that means there is enormous willing buying at that area, and you can see it on a price chart. It's very interesting to watch, especially on the 1 minute or the tick chart. You can actually see this happening, and it's a very fascinating observation if you're into that kind of thing. So we have imbalances in supply and demand. We had supply prices coming down, and then you have huge pending buy limits down here. Okay, this is a big imbalance. So if price comes down, all the people who are selling, which I'm going to show a graphic on this in a second, they're going to be just eaten up by the bullish liquidity. They're going to be eaten up, and then price will have to gap higher in order to meet that demand. Okay, so the intention is in the form of the unfilled orders. We talked about that. Yeah, we already covered this. Okay, and so we can see, if we focus on a price chart of, let's say, Ethereum versus the American dollar, the price chart is showing us what has already happened. Okay, it's a price chart is a lagging indicator. It shows us what's already done. Many people refer to a price chart as a leading indicator, but it's not. It's showing us what has happened. And so what we need to do is we need to focus on something called liquidity distribution patterns. And these occur typically at the ends of runs higher and run lower. And they have a very distinct pattern. And I like to refer to them as like the shakeout. Because if you have, let's use this as an example. Like if I have this cup here, and it's got a little bit of water in the bottom, and if I want the water in the cup to go out, I'm just going to do this just so you guys can see. Maybe so everyone else. I'll do it quietly so I don't get all over the computer. But if I go like this, if I go like that, I mean the water comes out. The water comes on the floor. And the water on the floor is important to the people who are looking to buy. Okay, they need that to happen. And so what they'll do is they'll allocate money to the market to facilitate this pattern happening. Their intention is to buy, but the liquidity that they need to fill their buy orders is in the hands of the weaker market participants. They'll shake them out, all the liquidity is on the floor, then they come and they scoop it all up, and then they buy it, and they use liquidity on the floor to fill their orders that drive price higher. And it has a very unique pattern that we'll take a look at. Okay, and so, I mean, essentially, price is moving from periods of perceived value where you have value is essentially it's a relatively low liquidity state where price is just moving sided. We have buyers and we have sellers who are happy interacting with one another. It's like going to the bike shop. You go to the bike shop and hey, Oka, I'd like to buy a new bicycle. And he's like, cool, I've got a bike here. I've got a Polygon for 3 million. Cool, that's 3 million. Can you do maybe 2.9? He's a bit like, because you're a friend, I'll do 2.9. Great. So you give him 2.9, and he gives me the bicycle. I mean, there's nothing crazy about that. That doesn't move. I'm not affecting the price of the bike just a little bit. And so that is just us doing business, okay? It's very low liquid. We do business. I get a bike. He gets some money. We're both happy. We're both happy buying. I'm happy buying at that price. He's happy selling at that price. So we do business. When the market moves sideways, like in small, they call them ranges or consolidation or accumulation, distribution, that's what's happening. Everyone's happy buying and selling. Okay, and companies around the world, if you consider, like, for example, the currency market exchange, you have people who need euros to do business, or they need Japanese yen or Swiss franc or whatever, and so they'll just take these and they'll just put them in the market, and they'll do it slowly, so they're not affecting the price of the asset, but they'll do that. And this is just what you can see when you have value, price just moving nice and evenly. Okay, so this is important, and essentially you have the price of an asset, you have value, and then all of a sudden the price goes up like 15%, if we exaggerate. You think, like, what on earth caused price to go up 15%? Who thinks that this asset is worth 15% more than its current price? Someone does, and so price jumps up like that. Okay, and then you think, oh, wow, what happens then? Well, then typically price will have a bit of a break, and then, like, people will get involved in the market at that price, and then price will continue to move sideways, and people are happy and, you know, buying and selling from each other at a new price. And that's all a price chart is. It's just people interacting with one another. All right. So historical value. Then you have discount and expensive prices. So if Oka says, he said, hey, Sarid, I have this bike. It's worth 3 million. But I have 7 of them, and so I want to get rid of them. So I'm going to sell them for 2 million. And I'll say, oh, cool, man, that's great. Okay, I'll take 2. And then the guy over here, he overhears, and he's like, really? 2 million for the 3 million? Cool, I'll take 1. And then the other people here. And this creates like an imbalance. But we're still at value, but we're exchanging. And when Oka runs out of bikes, he sold 10 bikes to the people in the shop or on the street. When he's out of bikes, then the market is now in our hands, okay? And then other people are saying, okay, I'll sell you my bike now for 2.1 or 2.2, but they're still at a discount. And this draws people off the sidelines into the market, and now we're all trading bikes, you know, and then the price go up a little bit. And and so essentially that was a discount price people want to buy. When price is super high, $69,000 for Bitcoin, that's really high. It's going to go down, especially when it moves parabolically. Because when price moves parabolically, am I going to show this? Yeah, I'll have to show this on a chart so you can really see. But when price moves parabolically, when price just spikes up and you have like one candle or one bar that goes up, in this bar, there is no liquidity. Nobody is buying or selling there. Buyers come in, and if there's if there are any offers in here, any selling pressure in here, the bids just like they eat it up, and price has to go higher. Actually, I have a graphic that I'll show that. Okay, here we are. So we have, this is a marketplace. This is market price, which means if you look at the exchange, okay, price is there. So this is where we are right here. Okay, so price is trading at this price here. But notice we have, these are hypothetical numbers, they're not real, they're just for the sake of example, where we have 10,000, we have blocks of 10,000 units above price, we have blocks of 200,000 units below price. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean when you have thin liquidity above price and thick liquidity below price? Can any of you guess where price is most likely to move? Exactly. Price is going to move up. Good question, Carol. Good question. The reason it's going to move up is if we go back to the example that we spoke about where you have tons of pending buy interest down here, price is coming down, So price is right here, and it dips into here, and we have 200,000 units. We need 200,000 units to fill this this block here. Okay, but we have very, very thin liquidity above. So we have weak hands above price, strong hands below. And so we're looking to buy. And so, actually, I think maybe I made a little, yeah, okay. I even made a graphic for this. Okay, so if we look here, okay, the example here, would selling or buying 50,000 units move the market more? And as the gentleman in the back said correctly, buying will. Okay, and so I'm going to show you what that means. If you think about 50,000, we have 50,000, okay? So I have 50,000 I need to buy. We have the offers here. There's only 10,000 available here. So I buy, and I still have 40,000 I need to buy. So that will cause price to jump up because there are no offers available at this price. The new price, the new value, is above price. So I say, okay, let's keep going. And then price goes up, and we go up, and price actually gaps higher. Have any of you heard of the term slippage or gaps, gap slip, stuff like that? This is what's actually happening, where you have people who come in to transact at a price point. They have a directional bias. They have an intention. They have an order. They put the order into the marketplace, and depending on the available liquidity that is on the opposing side of the market, price can either go higher, do nothing, or it can go lower. Because we're looking for 50,000, we take this one, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So by the time my order is filled, I've slipped five points. And so this is a good price, slightly worse, really bad, terrible. And so actually, I get a really bad price at the end of that move. And so what we have here, this then becomes something I refer to as a liquidity void, where there's no liquidity available in here. Okay, there's nothing in here. We have the buyers here, we have sellers up here. I mean, what happens then? What happens now? Price is kind of stuck, isn't it? And so price can't go up any higher unless someone comes in and buys. And so the only way for price to go down is to kind of pop back down into here. This is why you often see you have a parabolic move on an asset. It goes through the roof, and then it kind of sits there. And where does it almost always go? It almost always go right back to where it started. Exactly the back, which can make us understand why chasing price is such a bad idea. You know, Bitcoin's racing. It's like 20, 30,000, 35, 40,000. You're sitting there with your friends. Are you getting it? I'm still waiting for you. What about you? I'm already in 40,000, 45. And you think, oh, okay, I'm going to get in, but price is already up here. And then this guy jumps in, and it keeps going up a little bit. Then all of a sudden, it just dumps down because, first of all, the people who bought down here taking their profits, and there is so little liquidity above price that there are no buyers here. Okay, liquidity above price is gone, and so price has to come back to the origin of the move, and it does that every time, almost. It's always a question of liquidity, yeah.
No, I don't want that. The question mark is the liquidity, and how can we discern that? Like,
We'll go down the rabbit hole with all that. Absolutely. Okay, so if we look at it a different way, prices move to an imbalance in supply and demand. Okay, we have big buying, we have limited selling. These are the 10,000s, and here we have we have the spot orders, so the orders that people just click into, buy. And then you have the pending orders that are just nestled below price, which provides support. And so this big order here, this could be like a market order. And this could be 50. Here we have 30. It just takes it, just sucks it up, and then price just flies north. And the same happens for when price moves lower. Okay, you have weak hands. You have very small bids down here, and then you have the big selling here. And this is like an 800-pound gorilla just comes down, just takes this, and price just dumps, just tear through this in very, very short order. Okay. We look at it another way. Okay, this is this is one period of trading. Okay, we have the open. Let's say this is a day of trading. This is the open, and this is the close. And here we have the prices. Let's say this is like the American dollar versus the Japanese yen, just as an example. And here we have 600, let's say 600,000 units, 400, 300, 100, 200, 300. So again, we can see that the thin side of the market is above price. Okay, and so price comes in here. This is the day opens. We start trading. It kind of goes up a little bit. And what price is doing, when it moves in, it's seeking liquidity. Price is moving around. It's a magnet to liquidity. It's drawn to willing buyers and sellers in the marketplace. Price comes in, and we come down. When we come down, we find a little bit of buying interest because we're advertising cheap prices. Price comes up a little bit. We find willing sellers, so people start to sell. And the sellers now overwhelm the buyers that we saw here. So price has to come a little bit deeper. And then because we went so low, this is a discount price, so people get a little bit excited and they start to buy some more. Maybe the guys that bought here have a conviction the price is going to go up because they know a guy who's sitting on the trader's desk who just whispered them a secret. Or they're looking at order books, which is another way to do it. And so price jumps up. Okay, but note the price will move in the path of least resistance, which is through the thin liquidity and away from the thick liquidity. Okay, and so price just does this. I refer to this as pancakes, where this could be, for example, this could be a plate of pancakes. We have 3 pancakes on it. Okay, and so if I'm coming with my fork and I want a pancake, I put my fork in the top of the plate, and I prong the first pancake. And when I take that pancake and I start eating my pancake, if the person sitting next to me wants a pancake, well, then they're going to have to take their fork and they're going to have to go to the next pancake. And so the next pancake is gone. Then there's only one pancake left. And so each time we have people buying and selling, the liquidity available at that area goes down. Okay, and so sometimes, well, eventually, here you can see we have thin liquidity above price, and then price will keep going up, and then the liquidity here will go down. The amount of liquidity decreases as it's consumed by the opposing side of the market. So price will continue to drift higher and higher and higher. Okay, and so, I mean, discussing liquidity voids for a second, I mean, how can you find liquidity? I mean, what does it look like? I mean, it doesn't look like this. This is easy to see, but on a price chart, it can be a little bit more difficult to see. But there are tools that you can use that can help you understand what liquidity looks like on a price chart. Okay, you can use something called like asset strength, which I used a lot when I would trade currencies, where I would create an index, like an index value for each currency. So I would have the American dollar versus all of the other currencies, created a relative value. And I would put that on the chart. Actually, I can show you this in a second. And then I would have, I'd do the same for the yen and the Swiss franc. Excuse me. And all the other currencies. And then I could map them and I could see how they would perform relative to each other. I think maybe, yeah, here. Okay, this is what it looks like. And so here, this is actually my software. And we have the green line here, the line green. This is a Swiss franc. This is a euro, Japanese yen. We have brown for New Zealand because of all the cows. We have the red, which is a British pound. You know, the British, the poppy. We have the Australian dollar, American dollar, the green, and we have Canadian dollar, which is pink. And so what I do, and you can do this with crypto as well. I've done this with crypto as well, where you take Bitcoin and you see how it's trading relative to all other cryptos, and you create an index. Okay, this could be Bitcoin, for example. This could be Ethereum. This could be Solana. This could be Verus. You know, and so you can see how they perform relative to each other. Then you can see, wow, there are a lot of flows moving into this asset and out of the other asset. And so then you can start to hypothesize, I mean, what's going on? And it can begin to give you conviction of the future flows of these asset prices based on what you can see when you see like a graphical representation like this. Okay, and if we look at this, I mean, here, this is a price chart of an asset. It's going higher. Okay, you can see this is out of session by the looks of it. You can see these tiny little candles where price is just going up and down. This is out of session, unfortunately, but I mean, price is just going up and down like this. So we're buying and selling. This is a relatively low volume market environment. Bit of volume, a little bit more. Okay, but you can see that price is very clearly grinding higher. And so when you see that, then you can say, okay, well, price is moving higher. That means thin, thick. Okay, that means that we have people who are looking to buy. We have a keener interest in moving, becoming bullish on this asset than bearish. And if you look at this, in this example, I mean, this is the euro, the blue line, and this is the British pound. And so if you compare the lines of these two, you can see that even from the very beginning of the chart, even though it was moving sideways, it was moving gradually higher. Okay, so you can have Ethereum and Bitcoin, and they're both super, super rich, but they're moving sideways. And that's because this is relative strength, relative asset strength. So if you have a strong one and a strong one, they cancel themselves out. If you have a weak one and a weak one, they cancel. Neutral, they cancel themselves out. When you have a strong one and a weak one, this is when you're seeing movement, okay? And here you can see, I mean, these are pretty well matched. And if we go back to the example, if you go here, you can see it's not really doing anything. It's going sideways. Okay, so if we go down, and then you can see we have these sudden bursts of volatility. We have a lot of buying pressure, then price slowly starts to move away and move apart. Okay, and so watching indicators like this can be quite beneficial. We don't have to, and we're not going to. We're going to do it the different way by looking at the chart and understanding the buy and the sell zones. But this is just one tool of many. And this is nice, I think, when you start out and you want to see, like, okay, what's going on? You can have a hunch and then like, oh, that's right. What I thought was actually right. It's nice to get some kind of confirmation, visual confirmation. And here you can see the same thing happening. This is in session. You can see this because we have some strong price movements. But I mean, price opens here, the day opens, and it closes here. So what does this mean? Well, that means that we have a day of uncertainty. And so if you would consider what this candle would look like, this would be like a spinning top, you know, where you have the body of the candle is very thin, have a wick at the top and a wick at the bottom. This is for those of you who don't know, this is a candle. This is one candle, two candles. Each one of these are candles or bars, and they represent one period of trading. Okay, and so when you see when the candle is blue, that means that this is the open price. This is the low price. The wick at the top is the high price, and this is a close price. Okay, so when they're blue, the open price is lower than the close price, and when they're red, the open price is higher than the close price. Okay, and the wick, as we refer to these two, they show the highs and the lows. Okay, and so you could take all of this and you could put it into one candle, and it would be doing something probably similar to like this candle just here. They kind of opened and closed at the same time, a bit of pressure above, a little below, but we didn't really go anywhere. And that just tells you something about uncertainty or indecisiveness in a market. Okay, but this is just moving sideways, I think we can see pretty clearly. And if you look at this one here, I mean, the American dollar and the Australian dollar, I mean, they're just kind of married. We have like a burst, you know, you could see that the Australian dollar went down to relative to the American dollar, then it came back. Then we had the bigger one, and then another one. But they kind of, okay, this is like it's a little bit lower, but they're pretty close, aren't they? They're both weak. They're both negative, so they're both weak, but they're both weak relative to each other, and so we're not going anywhere. Okay. Okay, here we have another one. We're going down, and that's because this is the Swiss franc. This is the Canadian dollar. We have Swiss franc strength, Canadian dollar weakness. Okay, we have a lot of strength on the Swiss franc and a relative weakness on the Canadian dollar. So this pair is obviously going to be drawn lower, as you can see here. Okay, so what we're doing is we're looking for attractive high and low prices. One of the main issues with trading is that we're not trading the market, we're trading ourselves. It's always about us. We want to be right. We don't like to be wrong. And so we want the trade to go into profit very quickly. And it doesn't always happen. As a matter of fact, it rarely goes into profit right away. And so that can be quite difficult for somebody who wants to be right all the time. Okay, and so you have to use your eye. You have to trade what you see and not what you want to see. So when you're looking at a price chart and price is high, it doesn't mean buy, it means sell. When price is low, it doesn't mean sell, it means buy. You have to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. It's like going into a shop and buying a pair of shoes and, well, how much are these shoes? They're 500,000. It's a bit like, I'll give you 700,000 for them. It doesn't make sense. We don't think that way when we're buying consumer products like toothpaste and deodorant and flip-flops and whatnot. And the financial markets are the exact same way. You have to be rational. You can't get emotional. And one thing I've learned over the years is that no matter what the price is, price will always come back every single time. When price is at $20,000 and everyone's like, Bitcoin, $20,000, I should have got in. It's a bit like, wait, it will come down. And it came back to $33,000. For the people who can remain calm and rational and plan the trading instead of letting the trade kind of shake us and make us feel like a mess, you can do very, very well. Okay. Yeah, and this is a really important question, and this is kind of abstract maybe now, but when we look at the charts, like in future sessions, we'll really look close at this. But if you have a price of an asset, it goes up, and then it comes down, and then it goes up. I mean, there's a reason price goes up. Price doesn't turn around and go higher because there's no interest on price going higher. There's something there. There's a plate of pancakes just there below price. Carol.
No, I just want to be. I just want to call up around the time, and if we want to open for questions because it's already 12:30. So I mean, and I know that you could spend days and hours and weeks there. I can see your passion. So yeah.
Of course. I don't know how many more slides I have. I don't have many more slides actually. I think we're about through.
No, that's okay. You just go through, just because we want to leave some space for questions.
Sure. Let me. If anyone, just put your hand up if you have a question, and then I'll shut up, and then we can.
Yeah, and people online as well. If you guys have any questions,
sure.
You can also tap here in the chat, and I'll tell Sarid.
Yeah, and so I'll just go through this quickly. I mean, you have to ask yourself a few questions, and that is, how long did price stay at an area? Because if price spends a lot of time in an area, the liquidity in that area is going down, be it bullish or bearish liquidity, it's going down. And so the shock that we want, price coming down and like the shock price shooting up, the likelihood of something like that happening is reduced the more time price spends in an area. Okay, and we have these patterns like the shakeout pattern that I like to refer to. And so what we look for is I look for something called buy and sell zones. And this is very specific patterns that occur around a pocket of liquidity. And so we know that we have, in our example, we have tied up pending buy limits down here, willing buyers down here. And when price comes down, even when price leaves it, it does so often in a way that should okay, something's down here. Price leaves, and then you think, oh no, I missed out, buy. No, wait. And you wait because price will come back. And it comes back, and it'll come back and do very certain things. And we'll look at these in future sessions. It'll make very specific patterns at these areas. And these are the ones that we want to train our eye to see, because then you guys will be getting in. It's smoking prices of crypto when everyone else is pulling their hair out because they bought high and they sold low. I mean, we'll be looking for these patterns. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, I'll just kind of wrap this up. So, I mean, you have to keep things super simple. I recommend not looking at too many indicators, putting too many indicators on your chart, because an indicator is essentially a secondary representation of price. It's telling you, it's taking old data and it's running it through an algorithm and it's making it more visually enticing and interesting to look at, with colored lines and squiggly thises and dots and whatnot. It's taking your attention from what you should be focusing on, and that is the price of the asset. Okay, so try and remove all those squiggly lines from your charts and just focus on the chart itself. Okay, and the most important thing, whenever you're looking at like a crypto, just say to yourself, this is a bicycle. This is a bicycle. How do I want to buy a bicycle? Cheap. Okay, and just wait and just try and go at it the same way. I want it cheap. I want it cheap. And also consider for a second who's on the other side of your trade. If price is high and you're looking to sell, there's probably a retail guy on the other side of your trade and he's looking to buy. You're taking profits and you're selling to him, and he's happy to buy and you're even happy to sell because you'll be earning money. And also you have to remember, trading is not rocket science. A lot of people try to overcomplicate trading and make it into this black art. It's not. It's not at all a black art. The only thing that is a black art is mastering ourselves when we are trading. When we're in positions and you buy and you sell and how you feel, it's actually really beautiful. Because I recommend when you start trading, if you should decide to trade, to have a diary and write down your emotions when you're in trades. Okay, I know where I want to buy. This is the price I want to buy, and this is how I feel. Just like write down your mental state. This is how I feel, and then do the same thing once you're in the trade. Okay, wow, I'm in the trade. I own this asset, whatever, Ethereum. I own it. I'm in the trade, and how that feeling, how it moves around from in your body, and then you get excited, and sometimes it'll go below. Oh no, I went lower. Oh, God, I should have waited. And it's so important to document all of this, because when you read it in the future, it's wisdom. And this is very important to understand. And so knowing how you feel in a situation when you're experiencing greed or fear or anything in between, it's really important. It's actually, I consider trading therapy. For some, it can be really expensive. And for others, they only need a couple of sessions with the psychiatrist, and then everything's as good as gold. And so you can really just try and limit your tuition fees and your psychology fees, and that is by keeping them simple. Okay. Okay, cool. I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? I'll be thrilled to.
Yeah, I love that. It's therapeutic for you because you know the thing, yes, and you probably earn a lot of money with that. I can imagine that it's not so therapeutic for those that don't know. Yeah.
No, but you just have to.
Yeah.
Use your head, but not too much.
Yeah. So anyone has any question here in the room? Okay.
I was thinking there's a lot of different kinds of trading. I mean, time-wise.
Sure.
Yearly or daily, intradaily. How does these apply to those different timelines? I mean, if we compare daily to weekly, monthly, yearly, is it exactly the same, or do you use them specifically for long-term trading or really short positions?
This is actually a really, really good question. We didn't touch anything. We didn't touch on time in trading, which is a very important thing. It works on any time frame. But you have to understand as well that if you're on the minute chart or the tick chart, if you're interested in doing what's known as scalping, spending kind of in and out of trades, sometimes seconds to minutes, then you're out. A lot of the patterns that you're seeing are, it could be manipulation. And so you have to be very careful. It's easier to manipulate a data feed on a 1 minute chart where the time horizon is seconds than it is to manipulate a daily chart. And so personally, I trade on the 4-hour chart and up because that's all you need. As soon as you go to the 1 hour chart, the 30-minute chart, things can get a little bit sketchy. You're exposed to like the volatility of the market making, and that can pull you into something when you shouldn't actually be getting in. So really good question. Does that make sense? Yeah, super.
Yeah, and actually it's not a question, but we're going to create a cryptocurrency club here. So if you are online, please put your WhatsApp here and we're going to include you into And we're going to do that with the same people here. Anyone has any other questions?
Yes, Rebecca.
Okay, so my question, I almost forgot. Oh, so we're looking at the best time to buy or sell or whatever, and you're going to tell us these things. So is our hope that everybody else here is going to get that knowledge as well, or we're hoping to be better at that knowledge than everybody else? Is it going to help us or hurt us if we're all knowing and playing with the same information?
Another really good question. Luckily, we're all individual, we're all independent thinkers, and so the information that we learn here will be interpreted in 15 different ways. And so that'll never become a problem, unless we're all using the same algos. Even that will be different because there are discrepancies in price fees, and so it's never going to be the same. But you want to focus on what you're doing. You want to learn this stuff. You want to know how this stuff resonates with you, and you want to chew on it. You want to mull on it. You want to practice it, and it'll emerge after you've digested it. It'll emerge as like your own interpretation of it, and it might be quite different than this, but it'll come back in a way that really makes sense to you. And Stacia, it'll be a different process. She'll do it, and she'll sit with it, and she has her own psychological mindset. She has. You both have experiences from the past that already taint what I'm saying. Some of what I'm saying, you accept. Other stuff, you say like, that's bullshit. That's not even true what he's saying. And other stuff is like, that reminds me of this, and so it's generalized. And so you have to take what we're talking about and just make it your own, and it will become your own with time.
Also, what you're willing to. Some people are more risky.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, so a lot of people are super risky. They have enormous risk appetite. Other people aren't. I don't have a huge risk appetite, but I trade aggressively. But I try to keep it under control. I go to bed with open orders. That's okay to do. But if you can't, then you have to know that before you go to bed. Otherwise, you don't sleep, and you're picking up your telephone all the time. Oh God! Oh, it's red. Oh God! And then it can make your life hell. It can. So you have to find out. We can even do a session where we talk only about this, where you understand like how it can affect you, because it can make you sick if you let it. But if you find a way that you can put your orders in and you're on the daily chart, you don't care what's happening in 1 hour or 12 hours. You care what's happening in 3 months. And when you're focusing on these patterns, what is happening, what you think is going to happen in 3 months is like an 80% chance it's going to happen, because we're focusing on the fundamental thing that is making these assets move. Right.
Any more questions?
Is it something you have to do daily?
No, I recommend.
He does, for sure.
Yeah.
mean-
It sounds like I have to be on top of it.
No, but I recommend. You have to learn it. It's like my mentor said to me. I told one of my first questions. How long is it going to take me to learn? And he's a bit like, Sarid, that's kind of a stupid question. He's a bit like, ask your plumber how long it took him to plumb a house. And I was like, yeah, that's a good. You have to put in time to understand it. But what you can also do is you can put in a lot of time initially, understand the patterns, create like a framework, and then you can apply it on the 4-hour chart or the daily chart. And we'll do all this together initially. Like we'll spot trades, and we'll say this is a really good trade, and this is why. And then we can say, cool, okay. And then we can all buy crypto together, and some people will buy like $5 and others will buy a little bit more or a little bit less or whatever. But then we're kind of interacting with it together. That makes sense. But yeah, you have to invest time in learning it. But you don't have to spend 5 years unless that's what you want to do for a living. Right.
Thank you, my love. That's
pleasure.
amazing, and it's a good start.
Yeah.
there is a lot to learn. Thank you so much, and a lot of knowledge. And Thursday, Gabe is going to be here talking about NFTs. And the Crypto Club is going to happen every Monday. And the idea of these first sessions was really to kind of let you guys know about what is this all about. But over time, it's actually going to go into the juicy part, I imagine. Yes. And... yeah, so for those online, I actually put a link for you to get into the WhatsApp group.
Oh, cool.
So you can go directly. For those here, please put your name, your phone. If you have already put your phone, we're going to add you. And the idea is for us to share that. Some people were talking about use Telegram. Maybe we do that in the future, but I'm not so sure if everybody has Telegram. So let's keep simple for now with WhatsApp.
Perfect.
And thank you so much, Sarid.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.